Welcome back to the Grenadier podcast, Real Estate Uncovered. Today I speak with Logan Freeman. He's giving us advice as to whether buying off the plan is right for you. You obviously love this business. Tell me what you love the most about it. Today, an absolute exclusive. Welcome back to the Grenadier podcast, Real Estate Uncovered. Hi Logan, can you introduce yourself to us?
Yes, hi Lisa, I'm Logan Freeman.
Fabulous. Now today we're talking about buying off the plan. Can you tell us what that means?
Yeah, so buying off the plans is buying a property that is yet to be built or under construction. So the idea or something half done,
Yes.
really.
And what are the benefits, would you say, of buying off the plan?
I think in Christchurch there's probably quite a few benefits. First one is obviously we've been through the earthquakes and all that, so buying something new off the plans or newly completed, you don't have any historical damages or problems or any real question marks. They're all built to the latest codes and standards, and yeah, they're new. Obviously as well, Christchurch is probably a bit of an undervalued city at the moment. So obviously like any other property in Christchurch, there's the potential of capital growth, and sometimes even before you have to settle while it's being built.
In terms of that, buying off the plan, what's the normal time frame? Are you sort of settling 12 months later or 6 months later, or is it just a huge variable?
Yeah, it's a bit of a variable. Some developers or builders will only advertise them for sale once they've got the resource consent and building consent. Mm-hmm. So basically ready to turn ground and rip into it.
Yeah.
So that could be anywhere from sort of 12 months, 6 months, or sometimes even less, depending on the size of the development and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Some will sell them prior to building consent and resource consent. So they're really selling them as a bit of an idea sometimes. Right. And that could be as far as 18 months back. Yeah.
And based on that settlement time frame, would you expect a slight discount on, say, full retail when it's finished, or is that a bit hard to estimate?
I guess it is pretty hard to estimate. I mean, a few years ago, a lot of people did all right buying new builds off the plans before they were completed or whatnot, and the market saw a bit of capital gain by the time they had to settle on them.
Yes.
Which is obviously a massive bonus for the purchasers. But at the same time, often developers or builders, depending on how their company or their finances are set up, they might need pre-sales.
Yes.
So sometimes they will sell them a little bit lesser than maybe the retail price just to get the development underway. And that once you get a few away, it gives other buyers a bit more confidence to buy as well. So sometimes the first ones to go are often the best value.
Right.
And the developers will be working pretty hard with you to get maybe one of the first ones underway.
How flexible are the developers in terms of any input you might want to have?
I think it depends. I've dealt with developers that do, your 2-bedroom townhouses, and also people that have done $2 million brand new homes. And it depends on maybe the buyer. I wouldn't say it depends on the developer, it's on the buyer.
Okay.
Normally the builders or developers are pretty keen to hear of any requests to see if they can accommodate the buyer to get into that property.
Yes.
Some of the more sort of home type developments in the early stages, you can have a bit of input normally.
Yes.
And sometimes for that investor stock, depending on price point, it's more like, here's the product, do you want it or not, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe there's 3 colour choices. Or
Yep, often there is that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Or you could maybe up-spec the carpet or whatever.
Correct. Yeah, when it gets to like, changing walls and stuff like that around, it gets a bit complicated, especially if it's already had its building consent, or obviously if it started.
Yeah. In terms of people looking at buying off the plan, you obviously put down a deposit. Is it generally 10% or?
Generally, again, it's sort of developer or development case by case, or even case by case in general.
Yes.
Again, sometimes if they're wanting to get a few sales on the board, you can float a different percentage or maybe even a particular like figure. that
Yep.
works for you. And the
Right.
worst thing that the developer can say is no. So sometimes
Right.
people try that. Sometimes it's accepted. Sometimes it's not. But generally 10%, yeah.
And
Yeah.
so if you're paying 10% to secure your house and plot, would the balance not be till settlement, or would there be progress payments along the way, or can it just be all up for negotiation?
Yeah, a lot of the townhouse stock is what they call a turnkey package, where
Yes.
it's a deposit to secure it and the balance on settlement.
Right.
Some of the bigger homes do that as well,
Yep.
but there are some builders and some companies that require sort of progress payments along the way. They're typically more your building company franchises type thing.
Right.
Majority are probably leaning towards the turnkey setup at the moment, though. Yeah.
In terms of those payments, how does financing work?
Oh, it's probably a question for a broker or
A
a
mortgage
bank.
broker, yeah.
Yeah, I know that they have. It's normally set out in your contract on how it rolls. First of all, you actually buy the land,
Right.
and then you have progress payments at each key milestone along
Yep.
the way. So by the time you get your code of compliance, that's sort of pretty much the whole thing already paid for.
Yes.
So quite different in terms of the cost to the buyer, because obviously you might be either renting or living in another property, and you're sort of
Yes.
funding this along the way.
Along the way,
So
yeah.
the turnkey packages are quite appealing for not only first home buyers, but people
Yeah.
moving from home to home, and obviously investors too. They don't have to pay for or fund the development really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So from a bank's perspective, if you're buying something off the plan, you personally might come up with the deposit and the bank might lend you the balance on settlement effectively.
Yeah, that's it. So, new build properties are actually exempt from the Reserve Bank's LVR restrictions.
Oh, that's good to know.
So you have a little bit more flexibility when it comes to deposit or equity requirements to get
Yes.
into that property.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is obviously they're trying to promote new builds in
Yes.
the country. So yeah, typically you get pre-approved, you've got your deposit, whatever that might be, it's case by case kind of thing, but typically less than if you're buying something existing. Get your deposit, you pay that to secure it, you get pre-approved for the settlement.
Yes.
Sometimes you might have to get re-approved.
Yes,
when
because of
you-
the time frame, I guess.
due to the time frame.
Yeah.
But a few brokers I've been talking to reckon that 12 months is pretty safe.
Okay.
But
yeah.
over that, you might have to get reapproved, and sometimes it's gone up in value, and it's a real easy one. There has been cases where they've gone down, and it's become a little bit sticky as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Logan, tell me about some of the development and off the plan sales you've been involved in.
A memorable one was actually my first one. I was pretty green, brand new in real estate, and met a few guys that I'd actually met before real estate, and they said, "Hey, we've got this development on Hills Road." We priced them at 390 or 395, something like that, and within 24 hours, that all sold. About a week or not long after, we went into lockdown. And I know the buyers are a little bit scatty, but these developers were pretty keen to get into it and get it done, which they did. And geez, what can you buy for $390 now? They definitely did a right out of it in the end. So a
Yeah.
bit of a risk, bit of a gamble, maybe new developers, uncertain times.
Yes.
But yeah, definitely worked out pretty good for them, I'd say. And I know that at least two of them had gone and bought other ones again from the same developers to try it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I was also thinking, like once you've found a developer that you really like their style, or you have good communication with them, and they become like a trusted investment tool, don't they, really?
For sure. Yeah, definitely a bit of that.
Yeah.
You see that quite a bit.
Yeah.
People have their second or third from the same
Yeah.
developer. It's a bit like a brand or a car brand that you like.
That's
you sort of
right.
stick with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just rinse and repeat.
Same
And
thing, yeah. Just bank on time, really.
Yes. Yeah.
Hopefully.
And a moving market.
True, yeah.
But even you've still got your backup plan of maybe rent it out or sell it on.
For sure, yeah. And I suppose, like everything in property, time takes care of everything.
Absolutely. In terms of perhaps building a property portfolio or buying a couple of rentals,
Yeah.
do you think off the plan's actually probably quite a good way to go?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting idea. I like the fact that you can buy something today at today's price. Maybe take the gamble if it goes up or down by the time you have to pay for it and settle on it. But you can also, in a funny sort of way, buy an investment property without fully being able to afford it there and then.
Yeah.
And then you can sort of...
It's like buy now, pay later.
It kind of is, yeah. And then you've got the gamble of it going up by the time you settle, which has certainly happened. Yeah. So
it might give you enough equity to then replicate the process.
correct. Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of people have done that. I think it's a good way of getting into maybe the investment scene without having to think about a whole lot. It's new, it's all done. You don't have to do any renovations. It's a very passive property investment.
Yes. What are the potential pitfalls or risks for people? What happens if that developer goes broke, or, is there some things to look out for?
Yeah, I think the scariest risk is probably not being able to settle at the end. So that's, let's say you buy a particular property for 700 grand and 12 months later when you're due to settle on it, the market may have gone down and it's worth 700. The other thing is, like you said, Lisa, if the developer doesn't actually build the property, you could not only miss out on the actual property, but more importantly, if it takes like a bit of time for them to decide they're not going to build it or not going to complete it, and the market shifts in that time, then your real loss is the gain in the market already. So you've got to re-enter the market maybe 18 months, 2 years down the track at a higher price point, which you didn't sort of consider.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Your 10% deposit you pay, is that held in trust, or is that basically given to the developer to use as finance?
I haven't seen one that hasn't been held in the developer's lawyer's trust account.
Okay, cool. So there is a bit of protection there.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. And could you give a piece of advice to someone considering buying off the plan?
Piece of advice for someone considering buying off the plans, I think really just having good people around you. Ask a heap of questions, do a bit of research on the developer, talk to mortgage brokers and lawyers and get their opinion on maybe the contract for one.
Yes.
But also if they've had any dealings with that developer or whatnot.
Yeah.
I mean, we're pretty lucky here that Christchurch is obviously quite a small town.
Yes. City.
City. And the more people you talk to, the more people you'll know that have actually dealt with that person. Obviously, there's a couple horror stories out there, but there's also a lot of really good developers and a lot of really good stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And look at how much development's happening in our city. It's quite exciting, really.
True. Which also means there's a lot of choice to buyers.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Thank you, Logan. I think that's been really illuminating for those of us who are considering buying off the plan. That's been great advice.
Sweet. Thanks a lot, Lisa. Cheers.
Welcome. Thank you so much for tuning into the Grenadier podcast. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Please give us 5 stars. We'd really appreciate it.